Hi, welcome back to History for Homies. I'm your homie, Anfera, and on today's episode, I want to delve deep into the vice president because as a society, we've never really shown the vice president as much light, or we have never given them really as much importance as they should have. Partly just because they are always outshined by the president, but in reality, it's something that we should really talk about. So, firstly, I want to start talking about what actual duties being a vice president holds. And the first one, and probably most important one, is that they hold a tie-breaking vote over the Senate. And because of that, they can kind of sway something in their political side, which comes in handy, especially if something is as controversial or as argued upon, like a topic that's argued upon so much that it needs a tie-breaking rule. So that one power that the vice president holds in general is extremely important and should always be talked about. Something else that's also extremely important, thankfully we haven't had it too many times, is that technically the vice president is second in command. And especially if something were to happen to the president, he is the one to take over. Going with that, the 25th Amendment kind of states that the vice president and the Senate can temporarily put the vice president in charge if they deem the standing president is unfit to do their duties. So if they were to come down with an illness or put it in a coma or worse, then the vice president would take office. Okay, now let's talk about a bit more of what I was saying in the beginning about how the vice president role has changed over time. And to be frank, in the beginning, as I said, the beginning of America, the vice president role wasn't much of a big deal. It was kind of like a second place award, and I mean, it wasn't really shown any recognition. I like to use the example of if you and your cousin are playing the Xbox or the PS4 or whatever console, right? You guys are playing together, and your little cousin keeps nagging you on wanting to play, and keeps bugging you guys. Then sometimes you give your little cousin an unplugged control to shut them up and give them something to play with while not ruining the game. In terms, that was basically what the vice presidency role was in early times. They didn't really have that many powers, and no one really kind of listened to them. But things began to change with time, as most things do. Specifically, one vice president that really changed the way was Walter Mondale. He was the vice president for Jimmy Carter. And he really brought the role to light by just involving himself in government. You know, he would go to all the cabinet meetings, and he really made his presence known. And that did a lot, because in modern times now, being a vice president is a really high honor. And more than that, vice presidents in the past have had tremendous influence on America as a country. Good or bad, some may add, they've had tremendous influence. This is not the person I want to highlight specifically, but just to name a few, Dick Cheney. He's had a huge influence when he was vice president for George W. Bush. And being a vice president is also kind of a way to get your foot in the door to become president. We've seen this with Joe Biden, and we've also seen this now with Kamala Harris, who most recently ran. But with that, I want to actually dive into specifically Joe Biden, because his story is pretty cool. So he was a vice president for Barack Obama, which at the time I didn't know, and I only found that out when he was actually running for president the first time. But as vice president, he enacted a bunch of great things for America. He did a lot for economic recovery, specifically the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. And he also worked a lot with like foreign policy in countries like China, Ukraine, and Iraq. He did a lot for LGBTQ rights and same-sex marriage. And in total, he really had a lot of influence in in Obama's in Obama's term that at least I did not know. You know, before doing this assignment, I kind of thought that, the president called all the shots, and I didn't know that the vice president had actually so much, so many responsibilities and influence in everything that the country is. So yeah, that was my short segment on vice presidents, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much.